talk to me about, okay, how did you get into hardcore?
Oh man, I'd say around seventh grade. Uh, yeah, I was like 12 years old. My friend Sean Robinson made me a tape. I gave him two 90-minute tapes, and on those tapes he put on Minor Threat, 7 Seconds, Suicidal, Dead Kennedys, and I think Youth Brigade. And from there it was over, and just kind of gave him more tapes. The more tapes I gave him, the more he would put on.
So how long after that did you start doing, and what was the name of your zine again?
Oh, 118, because of the Simi Valley Freeway. Not very creative, but I didn't. It was something fast. It's actually the only reason I named it 118 was because I was just happened to be looking at the 108 records that I had, and I kind of sat there, and everybody was cutting and pasting back then, and I just kind of went, oh, I could totally cut and paste a 118 out of this, and so I ripped off both record covers for the issues, the only issues that I did.
Oh man, no, that's cool. That's cool. So in 118 though, as I remember, as we've discussed a couple of times, you didn't just do hardcore. Like you did, because you went to a lot of different shows, right? Or I mean, yeah. Was that by design?
Yes and no. It was weird. It was really weird because I don't know if you remember Sam I Am and Game Face at the Ice House.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sitting outside, and it was after the first issue, and I was sitting outside, and I was just giving them out, and somebody came from approached me from behind and was going, hey, what are you passing out? And so I gave her one. And
so you just passed it out. You weren't selling it?
I tried, but then I just didn't really try too hard, so I just gave up and started putting them in record stores and giving them out. And so I gave her a copy, and I turned back around because I was talking to somebody at the time, and she, over my shoulder, she just goes, let me know if you need anything. And it was a business card, and it was the publicist for Atlantic Records. So from there, she got me an interview with Sam I Am, and then from there it just got weird because I started getting calls from Epitaph, et cetera, going, hey, we want to put ads in your zine. How much do you charge? And I was going, nothing. I don't know. Because I didn't know about any of that stuff. So I was just kind of went.
Did you ultimately get paid for stuff like that? Or
No.
Did you just keep it? But did you run their ads?
Yeah. I put the ads in to take up space because I didn't, I wanted a thick zine, but to print thick zines, I just didn't know how much content because I didn't know what to write about or.
So you didn't take their money, yet wanted to print a thicker zine, which, as we know, at Kinko's or wherever you're doing it, is going to cost you more money, right?
Yeah. Luckily, we had friends who worked the graveyard shift.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that.
Gotcha. Okay. and so then, where did things go from there for you? Like you're doing 118. How long did you do that for?
I think the first issue was 92 or 93. When I moved to Orange County, I was working on the last issue that never came out. So like 96.
And what made you move to Orange County?
I was going to school at the time. I was originally going to move up to Santa Barbara for school, and then at last minute just decided on moving down to Orange County to go to Irvine.
Okay. And then you go to UC Irvine. At this point, you start doing your radio show on KUCI. What was the radio show called?
Into the Unknown. I basically took over for a friend of mine who had the Tuesday night punk show.
Okay. And then what kind of music are you playing on Into the Unknown?
Before I took over, I was just interning, and he was mainly punk rock. Because when he was doing the show, that was the big punk explosion. So
what year? Like, was that 94?
96.
Okay.
Because I had to do the intern, build up my hours, and then take over eventually at some point.
So what bands are you playing at that time?
Me or him?
I guess both.
Well, when he had the show fully himself, he was playing all punk rock, like Fearless Records punk, Epitaph, a lot of Crust and everything punk rock. when he would let me play stuff, I would start going into the hardcore and like the post-hardcore. And
What are some of those bands?
ooh,
Like Game Face, Far Side,
Game Face, Far Side, a lot of Youth of Today, Sick of It All,
Texas Is a Reason.
Texas Is the Reason. That
Promise Ring.
Not yet, actually, because when I took over is when those records started coming out.
Okay.
So that's when I really started playing the shit out of those bands.
Did you have bands play in the studio?
Yes. Yeah. The first band, my first time slot was 12 to 3.
Okay.
And I had Lidsville as the first band.
Okay, that's the band that the guys
Yes.
from like Rich
Steve
and Bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Greg, I think, was the singer.
Okay.
But yeah, I just reached out to them because I saw their name in Maximum Rock and Roll, and it said, "Oh, former Instead members start a new band called Lidsville," and then one of the times I drove down from Simi, I'd already known about Lidsville because one of the times, let me just rephrase that, I drove down to Zed Records, the usual trip.
Oh, of course.
And picked up the 7-inch because I saw in Maximum Rock and Roll that they'd started a new band. And then when I moved to Orange County, I wrote to them going, "Hey, I have a radio show. I don't know if you'd want to play." And they were cool and said, "Yeah, absolutely." And then from there, they got me the second band. They got me in contact with Sensefield. So they were the second band that I ever had. And that was literally a week or two later.
And then were there other bands like that you had on that played in the studio?
Yeah, when I took over, his name was Tang, my friend Tang.
Tang sounds familiar. Yeah.
He at that time he was interning at Epitaph.
Okay.
Good, but he was also going to school. He's like a crazy engineer now.
How was he interning at Epitaph and in school at UC Irvine at the same time?
Driving. He didn't care. Yeah.
Okay.
So so when I took over the show for him, oh man, it was cool. I had.
How long did you take it?
I really stopped in 2008 because that was when it was just the touring got way too out of, I just couldn't be home.
Gotcha.
And when I got home for the week or whatever, however long I was going to be home, I didn't want to drive to Irvine and do the show for 2 hours.
Gotcha.
Home. So at that time I'd already had a sub and I just offered to give it to him.
And so what were some of the other bands that played in the studio?
I had Game Face on. They played live. Farside played live. Saves the Day. Oh man, Strife played. And then a lot of local bands. Not too many. Tang had a lot of local bands. He was good. He was really good at featuring local bands. But when all the bands that I was playing at the time were starting to get noticed, really noticed. I mean, but at the time when Game Face played, they were already like out there. So I was pretty stoked when Game Face and Farside, as far as those two bands, agreed to play my show.
Gotcha.
I did try to get Texas Is a Reason once, but they couldn't for some reason. They were in town, but they couldn't. I'm trying to think of what I've had some hardcore bands on. I just not.
Was that
anybody.
At all when you would have bands in there? Would you have to have help, for instance, in terms of all the mics and getting everything set up, or was it still just a one-person job? And
we had a dedicated engineer.
Okay.
who would do the audio.
Okay.
Who would do the sound for the bands that you would hear.
So it wasn't like you were having to run around and wear a gazillion hats when you were doing this.
No, it was just me doing the show, and then the engineer setting up the bands like any live sound engineer would do.
So how many years did you say Into the Unknown was on for?
I think it officially dissolved in 2008. So I think Tang had it a few years before me because he had a co-host, and then I don't know what happened to her because I'd only met her I think once or twice, but so let's see, 2008, so 2009. I'd I'd say 15 years.
Wow.
Around 15 years.
And would UCI let you do the show even if you weren't a student there anymore? Because you obviously weren't a student for 15 years.
Yeah,
I mean, if you were, then
for a long time they were accepting people that weren't students.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, I've heard that you have to be a student in order to have a radio show there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then from there, and this whole time, at what point within this did you pick up a guitar, or had you always picked up a guitar?
I'd always been playing before I moved. I mean, I'm not a good guitar player I've told you before, by any means. But I started playing right around 10th or 11th grade, maybe 9th grade. A friend of mine, one of our neighborhood pals, his dad had gotten him a guitar, and he learned all the Metallica songs, showed me how to play one, and then read the tablature. And that was it.
From there, you just kind of...
Yeah. But then I was also the kind of idiot where I would open it up, tear it apart, and my dad was kind of tired of showing me how to do things. Or not showing me how to do things. He was kind of tired of, soldering everything back together.
Gotcha.
So he just goes, "You're going to watch me do this and figure it out."
And this is obviously before YouTube videos and things like that to kind of help you.
Yeah.
So then from UCI, where do you go from there as far as music, the scene, or was this during that period that you told me where you were trying to figure it out?
So when I finished school, I was trying to figure it out, and it wasn't shortly after.
What did you study in school?
History. I majored in history, the World Wars.
What was your what was your initial plan with that?
I was gonna go back to school, go to Fullerton to get my teaching credentials.
Okay.
And then try to start teaching.
Okay.
But the year that I actually started seriously looking into applying for Fullerton to go back, the band Homegrown from out here in Orange County just kind of went, "Hey, what are you doing in March? Because the guys would love to have you." Like John and I had been friends for a while, so he called me and was just like, "You want to come out?" And I kind of never stopped from there.
So then, okay, you said, and so now we're getting into the portion of the interview of you being a guitar tech, right? Mm-hmm. So here's my question. You just said, "I'm not a good guitar player." So as a guy that knows nothing about this, how are you able to do the job then? Or do you just know a lot about guitars because of what your father kind of...
You as far as electronics, it's good to know. It's really just kind of following wires and seeing where they go and what they do.
Okay.
As far as guitar playing, honestly, you really don't need to be a guitar player. You just have to know tuning, which there's always going to be a tuner there if you know.
I mean, I have it on my phone. I have it. But I'm saying you could have it on your phone. You could just... And
because I mean, there's a few people that I know that actually don't play guitar at all, and they're crazy guitar techs and stage managers and everything like that.
So can you intonate a guitar?
Yes.
Okay, so so then, I have more questions, but okay, so from Homegrown,
mm-hmm.
What are some of the other bands that you worked with?
Oh, that was the first long-term touring band that I went out with.
Okay.
Before that, it was another band, Limbeck.
Okay.
We were, before they really started being the crazy traveling touring band that they were at that time, we were taking weekend road trips, as far as Arizona or maybe even New Mexico, but as far north as, San Francisco, and then driving back down and going back to work. But after Homegrown, I mean, do you want notable bands?
Well, I mean, whatever you wanna, whatever well, I'm for it all. So I mean, I'm just saying whatever you can remember. I know that's kind of a loaded question because you've probably been out with a bunch.
Yeah, from Homegrown, I'll try to go in order. From Homegrown, I started working for Millen Collin. then
Now, how does Millencolin come about? Because they're like in another country. They're
Yeah.
like continents away.
yeah,
Or, I mean,
I wasn't teching for Millencolin. I was their merch person.
okay. And how'd that come about?
The first tour I did with Homegrown was with Millencolin.
Okay.
And then yeah, that was a 1-month tour, but we'd been friends since they came out. Actually, when their first show in the US I went to, and they played on the radio show when Tang was hosting the radio show, and so we met up again there.
So then, okay, here's my question. Does it kind of work like that as far as you see where, like, let's say you're on tour with two bands. One of them, the band that you're on tour with, that you're there for, stops touring. The other band's continuing. Will the other, like people like yourself often get picked up and said, hey, you want to just come with us on the rest,
It's happened, not for me, but,
Okay.
but it's happened. How I got, so currently I work for the band Taking Back Sunday. I've known them for a little while too, but I worked for the Used at the time, and the Used and Taking Back Sunday were on tour together. And so after that tour was done, they actually the next year they called me going, hey, do you want to come out? Are you free? And that's how I got in with Taking Back Sunday.
Is there ever sort of like a protocol, like, oh, we can't ask this guy because, we were, he's the Used guys, or he's Pennywise guy. Like, we can't ask him because he's tied up, or
what's funny is I started working for a band, who I was currently with the band. Apparently, this other band some of the members were talking to the other band going, hey, what are you guys doing after this tour? Are you good if we ask him to come out with us? Meanwhile, their management is calling this other band's management, asking, going, hey, the band is interested in taking him out. Would that be okay? Meanwhile, I know nothing.
Gotcha.
I'm just sitting here.
You're just a pawn in this game.
Yeah, but it was weird because the band is like, I'd known one of the people in the band, so him and I were always saying hi and talking, but it's just weird because all of a sudden the other members of the band were like, hey, what's up? How you doing? I'm going, we've never met. Why are you being nice to me? Kind of thing.
Right.
And then all of a sudden I get a phone call going, oh, that's why.